Toby, thanks for coming. So appreciate you sharing your time. Thanks for coming on. Why don't you give us just a quick intro and on who you are, and we'll get right to it.
Of course, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I'm Toby, developer from Sweden. I started way back as a Java backend developer, moved on to Angular frontend dev, a bit of Vue, React frontend dev, and then now I'm mostly doing full stack development for my own framework, CedarJS, that I'm sure we'll talk more about, but also for small startup companies.
Very cool. Yeah, we'll cover a lot of ground. I'm really curious to hear about your work in a variety of things. So let's start with Cedar. What is CedarJS? And if you could tell us about the history of the project, that would be great.
Yeah, of course. It started back when it was known as RedwoodJS, full stack React, GraphQL, Prisma, TypeScript framework, started by Tom Preston-Warner, the founder of GitHub, and some of his friends and colleagues as a open source project. And on my side of things, I found it because I wanted to help a local business here in Sweden where I live build a more advanced e-commerce solution, web shop. And I was looking for frameworks to help with that. At that time, I was mostly doing front-end work. So I was really looking for a framework to help on the back-end side of things. I knew all about React, but I wasn't so up-to-date on back-end side of things. So I really wanted a super opinionated framework that would help me get started quickly. And I was just helping this this company here, kind of like a friend of the founder there, while I was having a full-time job elsewhere. So I was doing it on nights and weekends. I found Redwood right at that time. Saw some blog post where they actually used Redwood to build a small web shop. So that was like a perfect tutorial for me to get started with. It was super early when Redwood was just founded and just one of their super early pre-version 1 releases. So a lot of things didn't work. At the time I was a Windows user on an old Dell XPS laptop, and all of their developers, they were using Mac and Linux, mostly Mac, I think. So nothing worked on Windows, of course. So to get it working, I had to fix a lot of bugs in the framework. One of the first PRs I sent was getting all of their unit tests running on Windows. It was like several hundred unit tests where I basically just fixed the path separator from being Linux or Mac only to be cross-platform compatible. But mostly switching from just hard-coded paths to using the join function. So that was my first PR, but there were many more after that. And I honestly actually realized I enjoyed contributing to the framework more than I enjoyed building the actual e-commerce web shop solution. So I started chatting with the framework maintainers. They were super friendly and they put a lot of effort into building a great community. And I was invited to join their own team meetings, and I felt that felt great. I mean, I felt like I was really part of the team at that time. And this was also right about when COVID started hitting, and we were all spending more and more time on our own at home. So I found this Redwood community to be my social. Instead of going into work to meet coworkers at work, I spend more and more time with my new friends in the Redwood community.
That's so cool.
That's how I got started with Redwood. As I said, the open source projects are just regular open source contributions at first. But as I started doing more and more PRs, I guess Tom really liked what he saw coming from me. So he invited me to be an official part of the team first. And doing that for a while, he then asked if I wanted to come on as a full-time paid employee or contractor for Redwood. So I actually quit my regular day job to do RedwoodJS full-time. And that was like definitely the highlight of my career so far, and
That's super cool.
it's still way up there on things I've done. Definitely colored me and like shaped me into what I am now as a developer.
So I'm just going over the timeline of events in my head now, and I think this is instructive for people listening, right? Particularly, those of us who are fascinated with open source projects and things like that. You were developer, you got interested and started using a framework.
Yep.
Noticed a problem with path separators. That's the backslash forward slash, right?
Yes. Yep. That's
And you
right.
happened to be the one who was interested, who had the Windows computer, who got your foot in the door through, something as simple as using path.join instead of hard coding slashes
Yeah.
into file paths. And then you ended up being colleagues with Tom Preston-Warner, the founder of
Yeah.
GitHub, and then going on. And that's how you kind of get started. And I think I want to zoom in on that, right? And it ended up being a part of your social life and, this big part of your life. And, that's amazing. That's kind of like what open source is all about. And I think a lot of folks don't fully appreciate how, open source projects, even one well-placed person who just is using it and is experiencing a friction point can just make a huge difference and transform their life as a result. Like when you look back on that, and I know we got more history to go through, obviously, because the project's obviously gone through a lot. I'm curious, kind of like, when you reflect on that, um, like what you said, it kind of changed your perspective as a developer. Is there something now that like changed in your workflow or in the way that you approach work that particularly jumps out to you?
Uh, yeah, I think like that community focus that we really like, we spend a lot of time on making it a welcoming community, both for casual users, but also for potential contributors. And everything that we did to make it easy to contribute to the project, I think really helped. We put a lot of effort into writing code that was approachable. And that was something that like when we did code reviews, we focused on writing code that would be easy for new contributors to look at and quickly understand. And let me tell you that pays dividends right now when you onboard AI agents. Like they can super easily get oriented in the code base. So we started out doing it for human collaborators, but it's also super helpful now with AI collaborators. So that's one thing. Like I think that is still important. Writing code that looks good and it's like readable for human, even though we might not write as much of it ourselves anymore. There's still a lot of people and machines reading it. So writing readable code and understandable code is something that I take away, or like that I take with me from that time. And also just being super friendly and approachable online in your own forums, if that's Discord or Slack or just like local meetups. Being welcoming and approachable. Like that's the treatment that I got when I joined or got started with RedwoodJS, and that's the treatment I want to give people when they find CedarJS and want to contribute to that framework.
So connect those dots for me. Redwood.js. We're back in the COVID era,
Yeah.
and today CedarJS is here as the successor to that. Can you paint a picture on like where the project has been since then and where it is now?
Yeah. Uh, yeah. So like I said, there was RedwoodJS was founded by Tom Preston-Warner as a passion project of his, pretty much. Like he felt that the world needed a proper full stack framework for JavaScript and TypeScript. Uh, Obviously, he comes from a Rails background because that's what they use to build GitHub. So he felt that there was a gap on the JavaScript TypeScript side of things. Like there wasn't anything kind of like Ruby on Rails. So he wants to bring something of that like that into the ecosystem that we all live in with TypeScript and JavaScript. And he also has ties with Netlify and wanted to do something for the serverless or Jamstack as it was called at that time way of building applications. So that's where it started. And when it started, GraphQL was like on everyone's minds. Like everyone was talking about GraphQL. And connecting back to Netlify, they had Gatsby, which was big on GraphQL. So that's where it started. And we built this framework of his, like his dream team framework. And he got on all the podcasts, and we attended the React conference in Las Vegas to talk about RedwoodJS. But unfortunately, it never took off in the way that Tom wanted. So eventually, after like 4 years or so, he decided to pretty much shut the framework down. And one thing that happened during this period was that one of the original founders they were 4 people starting RedwoodJS pretty much, and Peter Pistorius was the one who wrote most of the code, at least from the beginning. After a while, he took his experience with RedwoodJS and started his own startup called Snaplet. So he left RedwoodJS to build his own product, Snaplet. But after a few years, he decided to shut that down and came back to RedwoodJS. And this was right about the time when Tom decided to shut the product down. So instead of shutting it down completely, he handed it over to Peter. Basically just gave the name RedwoodJS to Peter and gave him access to all of the GitHub stuff, the RedwoodJS organization and everything, and told him to do what he felt was right for the framework. Peter, at this time, like the excitement or the hype around GraphQL had died down a little bit, and people were asking for the new hot thing on the scene, which was React Server Components. So I spent a lot of time trying to make React Server Components happen for RedwoodJS, but honestly, it was too early. The tooling wasn't there, the documentation wasn't there, so I never there is experimental support for React Server Components in RedwoodJS, but it wasn't and still isn't like very good. It's definitely not production ready. So Peter decided to rebuild a new framework on top of React Server Components as like the primary building block, and make it less opinionated and more focused on web primitives, or like the platforms and the anything that you can find on MDN. That's the way to build things. The primitives that we use on the web platform. So focus on that and make it smaller, make it simpler. Because development on RedwoodJS, it started to get pretty slow. Like it's a very, very big framework, and it's a lot of work to keep it all up to date. And we had a lot of integrations, like a lot of things that made RedwoodJS feel like magic to new users, me included when I found it, was all the integrations that it has. Like we integrate with several different deploy providers, Netlify being one of them, but there are many more. We integrate with several auth providers, Superbase, Clerk, Netlify Auth at the time. We also have our own auth provider. We integrate with like several different kinds of services, and maintaining all of those is a lot of work. And we unfortunately never got to the scale where those companies felt it was worth like maintaining that integration on their own. So it all fell on us to keep those integrations alive. And that's really slowed development down on new features.
Sure. I mean, not to mention
Peter
all the
wants to build
JavaScript
something new.
dependency, right?
Yeah, sorry.
And I'm sure you had, not to mention all the JavaScript dependencies too. I'm sure that.
Yeah, I mean,
I haven't checked the package JSON in a while, but there's a lot of moving parts there too, I'm sure.
It's huge. Like we were like 5 people working on RedwoodJS, pretty much full time, or at least almost full time. And basically one of us was constantly just trying to keep Dependabot happy.
The 6th member of the team, Dependabot.
yeah. So that just keeping the dependencies up to date was pretty much a full-time job. But So Peter took the Redwood name and built his own dream framework. Now built around React Job components, focused on Cloudflare, make it something smaller, simpler, easier to work with. But I have totally fell in love with RedwoodJS and the community around it. And even though it never got as big as Tom wanted, we still had a fair number of companies building their entire company on top of RedwoodJS. And
you even had you had a design framework too. I forget which one. Wasn't you had a design framework in the box too, right?
I mean, we had integrations with several. We had Tailwind integrations. We had ChatCN integrations. We have Mantine integrations. We had all of them, and we also had like people from the community trying to bring their own design systems into RedwoodJS. We had one that was like pretty far along, almost ready by the time that we stopped developing RedwoodJS, but so it never landed, but it was almost complete. That one bespoke for Redwood only. So like I said, I felt bad for all those companies that actually did build their entire business on top of RedwoodJS. And I wanted to maintain Redwood for those companies. So Peter actually did hire me for a while to keep maintaining RedwoodJS. But up until Tom stopped wanting to develop this anymore, he was pretty much bankrolling this out of his own pocket. As I said, it was a passion of his that he wanted to see live. But when he handed it off to Peter, Peter would have to find a way to fund development, and it's difficult to make developing a full stack framework quite profitable. So he really had to trim the organization down, like he had to trim the team down, and decided to let me go. Like he couldn't pay for both his new framework plus me maintaining RedwoodJS, which is totally understandable. But I did find a few companies who wanted to keep building on top of what was RedwoodJS, and one of them asked me to fork RedwoodJS. They initially wanted a private fork of it, just so that they knew that they were in control of the code base and it wouldn't die under their feet. They could own it themselves. But I convinced them that it would be better if it was an open source project, but if it stayed an open source project. And that's today CedarJS. Like I ported and named it CedarJS thanks to this one company reaching out to me and offered to sponsor me to fork it and set it up on a different GitHub organization as an open source project with all the automations and CI integrations and everything that we had for RedwoodJS. So it would just keep on working as it had always been working. And I also copied over the RedwoodJS documentation so that when they onboard new people, they would still have live documentation that they could reference somewhere.
If I'm not mistaken, CedarJS, the APIs are not too different from RedwoodJS, right? I know it's simpler. It's a simpler surface area now. That simplicity is due to the number of integrations, or are there fewer feet? Like, tell me more about, how you would talk to somebody who maybe was a user of RedwoodJS and is now like, looking at CedarJS, for example.
Yeah. So my goal for CedarJS was that the swap from RedwoodJS to CedarJS would be super easy or super simple. Pretty much just update the names of your dependencies in your package.json files, and you're good to go. So that was what I wanted to do for CedarJS 1.0. It was supposed to be 100% backwards compatible with the latest version, latest stable version of RedwoodJS. And I almost made that a reality. Like I made the reality for most users. The one thing was that I had to bump the minor version of Node that we supported. We were on Node 20, like just 20 anything for RedwoodJS, but I had to bump that to 20.19 for CedarJS. So a few minor versions higher, but not the major version bump. So I felt that was a decent like trade-off. And the reason for that was that given with Node.js 20.19, we got support for require ESM, so I could update some of the dependencies who had stopped supporting CommonJS and only released ESM packages. I could support a few of those. So that was the reason for that bump. And this was actually a job that we had started way back in the RedwoodJS days of trying to migrate from CommonJS, which was the only thing that anyone wrote when Redwood was founded, to ESM.
Not an easy task.
I mean, that was a humongous task. It's definitely gotten a lot easier. But yeah, no, that was a huge task. So we had to do dual package. So to release both CommonJS and ESM packages for a while. So that was also one thing that made developing on RedwoodJS like slow down. We had to support both of those. So yeah, but as Cedar has progressed and moved on, we're still like very close to RedwoodJS, but there are definitely a few additions that are not part that were never part of RedwoodJS. That's only part of Cedar. And yes, I have dropped a few integrations, and the ones that I do still have are not as well. Like not all of them are still as well tested as they were on the RedwoodJS days. Like for example, for the deploy provide integration for RedwoodJS, we had a CI job that would actually go and deploy on all of these providers every time we're preparing for a new release. Like not on every PR, but for every whenever we were about to release a new minor or patch version, we just made sure to run our integrations tests against all those providers. But like a lot of those happened because Tom and other people on the team were well connected and had ways in on with those companies, so they would allow us to set up free integration tests against them. I don't have that kind of network, unfortunately, so those integrations have stopped working. Like those CI integrations have stopped working, not the actual integrations. Yeah.
But yeah, like the broad strokes are like, and full disclosure, I really like CedarJS and its predecessor RedwoodJS precisely. And maybe I'm channeling my inner Tom, but I've used Rails a lot in my career, and I've used GraphQL a lot in my career, and I just feel like CedarJS is sort of like the framework that the JavaScript web dev world needs. Not necessarily the one it deserves, but the one it needs for sure. And I mean that in the best way, because I do think that we tend to overthink and be too precious about choosing every single bit. And the curative properties of a framework like CedarJS, I think, are a welcome relief in an era where so many of our dependencies and everything like that have to be individually considered. And I think that the overall result is quite good. And you mentioned earlier how GraphQL had evolved since you started with the project. And as you pointed out, like JavaScript and GraphQL, well, GraphQL really caught on with the JavaScript crowd, particularly in the 2010s, late 2010s. And it really is a great fit with that ecosystem, React and other things too. And as you also acknowledged, like the hype has shifted a lot. Like it's died down. GraphQL, though, it remains as more widely used than ever. But it seemed, I think, today, and we're recording this in 2026, as more of a platform technology, I feel like. Not that it's gone away. I mean, the number of Apollo client downloads is skyrocketing. But what's your take on that? Am I oversimplifying that? Do you feel the same way, like GraphQL is being shifted to more of a platform kind of mindset, or am I just seeing this from a different point of view?
I mean, like any technology or like most technologies, it has its cycles. When it was first released, or like when in the hype days on the 2010s, some people said it, like made it out to be like the solution to all of our API problems, like all the integration problems. I think now we have all landed on a more nuanced picture of things, and it might not be the perfect fit for everything. Definitely more things than people give credits for, but maybe not everything. And yes, it's definitely growing. And this is also like one of those things. What's your internet bubble like? I have as I have been attending a few GraphQL conferences and meetups, all the algorithms on Twitter and what Google shows me and everything has taken notice and shows me a lot more of what's happening in the GraphQL ecosystem than it did before. And it's definitely alive and kicking. One thing that I feel though is that compared to 2010, 2015, when people tried to use or like when it was getting more popular, when people tried to use it everywhere, now it's probably more popular in larger corporations. Like we have definitely a lot of users in big companies like Meta, stuff like that. It's honestly more complicated or more difficult to convince a small team of like 1 or 2 people to use GraphQL. The reputation it has is that it's a lot of ceremony around setting everything up, and it's a lot of work. And I think that the image is that it's the best fit when you have like a dedicated team pretty much doing GraphQL all day, every day. But I think that's one of the strengths of RedwoodJS and now CedarJS is that is how simple it makes it to how easy it makes it to work with GraphQL. Like the way that we have set up our resolvers as services, it couldn't be simpler. It's everything is wired up for you, so you barely even realize that you're working with GraphQL, honestly, on that layer. There are like several different ways to work with GraphQL. We chose a very schema first approach where we have STL files. We're also schema first with the database. We use Prisma and obviously leverage the Prisma schema a lot. And having the Prisma schema, having the STLs, just those two things I think for me, it makes it super easy to get a good overview of what the entire backend is doing. I don't have to look at all of the implementation code. I can just look at the database schema and the GraphQL schema, and I pretty much know what the entire backend is doing.
I mean, that sounds like just a prescription for a small team, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And pair that with the Redwoods and now Cedar's router, which is like you have a single file where you define all of your front-end routes. And with that, you just pretty much you look at the routes for the front end, look at the STLs for the API, and look at the database schema, and you have a pretty good picture of your entire application. And I think that's a huge strength, especially as I said, for a small team. And as I said in the beginning, I now work a lot with startups and small teams where I'm the only or just one of few developers. And together, me and with AI agents, I mean, I can build a lot, and I can still keep very good understanding of how everything is working, thanks to how declarative everything is with that approach to designing the application.
So I'll bring it around now.
Yeah.
For folks who are curious or are already using CedarJS, and I hear, it's not as easy to integration test with existing deployments. So if somebody's gonna walk your path like you did earlier in your career in figuring out the Node.js Windows path files, is the low-hanging fruit now figuring out like deployments? Is that the open source contribution that would make a huge impact as somebody who's working with a specific deployer, like being able to help maintain those connections?
I would actually say the contribution I would welcome the most is help with the tutorial. So I not really actually like code contributions at all, more documentation oriented. I think that's one thing. And another thing that RedwoodJS did really, really well. And that also ties back into trying to be welcoming and open to new folks joining the community. Is we spent a lot of time and effort on a very thorough tutorial. Like a lot of people like, or some people would call it a book, not a tutorial. Like it's long. It covers a lot. But that's also strange. Like that's one thing that I hear when I talk to companies who use Cedar. Like they can just point anyone that they like, any new hire, they just point to Cedar tutorial, have them go through it, and after that they pretty much know everything they need to know about the framework. And with that, also a lot of how that business operates and how all of their code is organized and how it works. Because it's so opinionated, you just have to learn it once, and then of course, you can apply it anywhere.
All right. So you heard it, everybody. If you're a user of CedarJS, take a look at those tutorials and, help wanted. Toby, it was awesome having you on for part one of this. I'm so looking forward to diving deeper into some other aspects of what you've been up to and what we can learn from it in part two. So thanks so much for taking the time. I know our audience really appreciates it.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun. Thank you so much.